Oh, I got it. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. All right. Narayanam namaskritya narang chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 10th day of August 2018 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 4, Sati Quits Her Body, text number 16. Kim va shivakyam ashivang na vidustvaranye Brahmadayastam avakirya jatashmashane Tanmalya basman Tanmalya bastan kapalya vasat pishachar Ye murhabinta datita charana vasrishtam. Kim va shivakyam ashivang na vidustvaranye Brahmadayastam avakirya jatashmashane Tanmalya basman nikapalya vasat pishachar Basman nikapalya vasat Ye murhabinta dadita chadana vasrishtam King va shivakyam ashivang na vidustvad anye Brahmadayastam avakirya jatashmashane Tanmalya bhasman kapalya vasat pishachar Ye murdhabinta datita chadana vasrishtam. Kim va shivakyam ashivang na vidustvaranye Brahmadayastam avakirya jatashmashane Tanmalya basman nikapalya vashatrikaya Ye murdhabinda dadita chadana vasrishtam. King va shivakyam ashivang na vidustvat anye Brahmadayastam avakirya jatashmashane Tanmalya basman nikapalya vasat pishachar Ye murdhabir nadatitat chadana vasrishtam. Kimba shiva kim ashivang na vidustvat anye. Brahmadayastam abhakirya chatashmashane. Tanmalya basman kapalya vasat pishacha. Ye murdhabir dadaditat chadana vasrishtam. Kimba shiva kim ashivang na vidustvadanhe. Brahmadayastam havakirya jatashmashane. Tanmalya basman kapalya vasat pishacha. Ye murdhabir dadaditat chadana vasrishtam. Well, I got to admit, the bhakti chanted it the best. Synonyms: Kingba, weather; Shiva Akyam, named Shiva; Ashivam, inauspicious; Naviduhu, do not know; Tvat Anye, other than you; Brahma Adayaha, Brahma and others; Tam, him, Lord Shiva; Avakirya, scattered; Jataha, having twisted hair; Shmashane, in the crematorium; Tatmalya, Basma Nirkapali, who is garlanded with human skulls and smeared with ashes; Avasat, associated; Pashachai, with demons; Ye, who; Murdabihi, with the head; Dadati, place; Tat Charana Avasrishtam, fallen from his lotus feet. Translation: Sati addresses her father Daksha. Do you think that greater, more respectable personalities than you, such as Lord Brahma, do not know this so-called inauspicious person who goes under the name Lord Shiva? He associates with the demons in the crematorium. His locks of hair are scattered all over his body. He is garlanded with human skulls and smeared with ashes from the crematorium. But in spite of all these inauspicious qualities, great personalities like Brahma honor him by accepting the flowers offered to his lotus feet and placing them with great respect on their heads. Purport: it is useless to condemn a great personality like Lord Shiva, and this is being stated by his wife Sati to establish the supremacy of her husband. First she said, you call Lord Shiva inauspicious because he associates with demons in crematoriums, covers his body with the ashes of the dead, and garlands himself with the skulls of human beings. You have shown so many defects, but you do not know that his position is always transcendental. Although he appears inauspicious, why do personalities like Brahma respect the dust of his lotus feet and place on their heads with great respect those very garlands which are condemned by you? Close quote. Since Sati was a chaste woman and the wife of Lord Shiva, it was her duty to establish the elevated position of Lord Shiva, not only by sentiment, but by facts. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. This is the conclusion of the Vedic scripture. He is neither on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor on the level of the ordinary living entities. Brahma is in almost all cases an ordinary living entity. Sometimes, when there is no ordinary living entity available, the post of Brahma is occupied by an expansion of Lord Vishnu. But generally this post is occupied by a greatly pious living entity within this universe. Thus Lord Shiva's position is constitutionally higher than that of Lord Brahma, although Lord Shiva appeared as the son of Brahma. Here it is mentioned that even personalities like Brahma accept the so-called inauspicious flowers and the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. Accept means accept and place them on their head. Great sages like Marichi, Atri, Bhrigu, and the others among the 9 great sages who are descendants of Brahma also respect Lord Shiva in such a way because they all know that Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity. In many Puranas it is sometimes asserted that a demigod is elevated to such a high position that he is almost on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the conclusion that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead is confirmed in every scripture. Lord Shiva is described in the Brahma Samhita to be like yogurt. Yogurt is not different from milk. Since milk is transformed into yogurt, in one sense yogurt is also milk. Similarly, Lord Shiva is in one sense the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in another sense he is not, just as yogurt is milk, although we have to distinguish between the two. These descriptions are in the Vedic literature, specifically Brahma Samhita. Whenever we find that a demigod occupies a position apparently more elevated than that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is just to draw the devotee's attention to that particular demigod. It is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9.25 that if one wants to worship a particular demigod, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is sitting in everyone's heart, gives one the greater and greater attachment for that demigod, so that one may be elevated to the demigod's abode. Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. By worshipping demigods, one can elevate himself to the abodes of the demigods. Similarly, by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can be elevated to the spiritual kingdom. This is stated in different places in the Vedic literature. Here, Lord Shiva is praised by Sati, partially due to her personal respect for Lord Shiva, since he is her husband, and partially due to his exalted position, which exceeds that of ordinary living entities, even Lord Brahma. The position of Lord Shiva is accepted by Lord Brahma, so Daksha, Sati's father, should also recognize him. That was the point of Sati's statement. She did not actually come to her father's house to participate in the function, although before coming she pleaded with her husband that she wanted to see her sisters and her mother. That was a plea only, for actually at heart she maintained the idea that she would convince her father, Daksha, that it was useless to continue being envious of Lord Shiva. That was her main purpose. When she was unable to convince her father, she gave up the body he had given her, as will be seen in the following verses. Om Jnana Timurandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So this is an argument that Sati is giving. She's trying to convince her father to respect her husband, which he hasn't done until now. And this argument that she's giving is the appeal to authority, which is very important in our theology. In the West, generally we like to think that we can figure it out. We'll look at the evidence ourselves and we'll see what comports with what we already know to be true, and then if it doesn't add up, then we know that it's some false claim or something like that. And so many people who may come in touch with our books or our ideas or hear devotees speak, they'll before long they'll hear something that doesn't compute with what they already think they know, and if it's serious enough, they'll discount the whole thing. For instance, a good example is, because I'm always immersed in this editing stuff, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 10th chapter, text 21, or in the 10th chapter in general, Krishna is giving so many examples of how he's present in this world through his vibhutis. Vibhutis means power or opulence, something that's extraordinary. That's the title of the chapter, is Vibhuti Yoga. And you know, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, of bodies of water, I'm the ocean, of fish, I'm the shark, of warriors, I'm Arjun, like that. And he goes through a whole list. So one of the things he says is Nakshatranam Aham Shashi. I forget, I think this is text 21. There's several other things in it, but one of the things, the last line is Nakshatranam Aham Shashi. Now, Nakshatranam indicates in general, heavenly bodies, which includes the moon, the planets, and what we call the stars. But it can also just mean the stars. And Prabhupada took it to mean the stars there. So therefore, what that means of stars, I am the moon. You see? And so in his purport, as Prabhupada dictated it, he said, well, this is a challenge to the common view of the scientists, who, as you probably learned in 3rd grade or earlier or later, that those stars up there all have their own little solar system. They're like our local star here. The sun is simply a local star, and that's why it's bigger and more powerful, and rely on it. But those stars are all separate suns, and they have their little solar system and like that. Or now, you know, since I was in 3rd grade in '54 or whatever it was, they've discovered, oh, they're not just stars. Some of them are whole galaxies. You know, if you study the common view of what they've got all these telescopes. So, but Prabhupada insisted, no, here it says, of stars, I am the moon. Therefore, all those stars are just like the moon in that they reflect the light of the sun. There's one sun per universe, and in our universe, we know what the sun is, and that's it. And whatever else you see up there, those are reflecting the light of our sun. Well, that was too much. To, you know, that he didn't believe it. Our first editor, I agree with, did wonderful work. He did a tremendous service for the Prabhupada, but at certain points he couldn't accept the Vedic cosmology. And oftentimes you'll see the word solar system where Prabhupada actually said universe. Anyway, so he just cut that out. He said, this one paragraph will make this whole Bhagavad Gita. People will reject the whole philosophy and the whole Prabhupada and everything on the basis of this one paragraph. And so he cut it out, took it out. It wasn't there. And when the unabridged Bhagavad Gita came out, you won't find it in there. We call it the Macmillan Gita because they publish it. So this is an example of our own what we think we understand through science or our own perception, butting up against something that's explained in the Vedas and rejecting it. Now that paragraph was eventually restored. You'll find it there now, but it wasn't there at that point. So now let's go to what has Daksha done? Daksha has made a judgment on Lord Shiva based on his appearance. He's got this garland of skulls. He's always in the crematorium and dusted with this dust, which is said to be unclean. His associates are the bhutas and the pretas and the ghosts and all these people who nobody else wants to associate with. So, and he doesn't even have a home. He just meditates under a tree somewhere. So how is he a proper match for my daughter, my exalted Sati? So that's, he's made a judgment that this Shiva is inauspicious, based on his, superficial observation. So now Sati is saying, well, what about Brahma? Brahma is your father, and he's very respectable. You show respect to Brahma, right? And he did show respect to Brahma, although he did show a little disrespect by just referring to him as the creator, or rather than his father. Earlier, you may recall. But still, Brahma's Brahma. So, do you think that greater, more respectable person than you, namely Brahma, do not know this so-called inauspicious person? In other words, they're saying they don't think he's inauspicious. You've created, or in your mind, an imaginary personality called the inauspicious Shiva. Don't they know him? They know the same person you know, but they show him great respect. And it's not just Shiva, as Prabhupada points out, it's all other demigods and all these people. So they're greater than you, why don't you respect them? Now, this is really, what is so important for us, this idea, this argument, this way of understanding the truth. When people start doubting the scripture, doubting, say, well, what do you think? We have Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and his Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and a whole parampara, who are glorifying Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They accept Lord Chaitanya. That one point, which is a contentious point. There are many people in India who accept Krishna, and they accept Lord Chaitanya as a great devotee of Krishna, but they don't accept Lord Chaitanya as God, right? But it says in our Shastra, certainly Chaitanya Charitamrita, and our acharyas have pointed out there are certain verses in the Bhagavatam, namely Krishna Varnantusha Krishnam, that's one. There's also, which describe, in this Kali Yuga, the non-blackish, that is golden avatar, who's always chanting the name of Krishna and who spreads Sankirtan, you know. And even Prahlad has one, you know, that one, Ittam, where he says he appears as a Channa, that God appears in 3 yugas, but in the 4th yuga he doesn't appear openly. But he appears covered, in a covered avatar, and that's what Lord Chaitanya was. He didn't declare himself Vishnu, and he would even decline being addressed as Vishnu, especially in public. But he revealed himself to be Krishna to his intimate associates. So the point is that when we have certain doubts about parts of the philosophy, and I admit it's just far out, 30 billion, you know, you mentioned the 30 billion bodyguards of Ugrasen. There was that conversation. It's a famous and infamous conversation. I can tell you after why it's so infamous. Of two of Prabhupada's disciples. They were trying to preach in the universities. In those days, that was a big emphasis, to go out and preach the universities. And they had trouble trying to defend this statement in the Krishna book, you know, about 30 billion bodyguards. Where would they all stand? I mean, we have such a, you know, yeah, we have 7 billion people on this earth, but 30 billion in Dwarka? It's a little place. Doesn't compute. So they were complaining to Prabhupada. They didn't believe it, you know, and finally they got to the point, well, then you should leave Krishna consciousness. Somehow or other, you know, the bending of the time-space continuum or something, you know, made it possible for them to have. The point is that the Bhagavatam is so highly revered as the Amala Purana. It is the crown jewel of all the Vedic literatures, and it's respected by all our acharyas and quoted as pramana. You remember that word pramana? You were in the class the other night. We studied the end of the 16th chapter. In the 16th chapter, Krishna has these important instructions, where basically the last thing he says is, it stands on its own, tasmat chastra pramanam te karya karya vivastite. Is that when to determine your course of action in this life, what you're going to do and what you're going to avoid doing, which is what's going to determine your destiny, you have to consult Shastra, genuine Shastra. And having consulted it and understood it, you should actually act that way and refrain from acting as a matter of duty. That's the last verse. So how do we know what Shastra is? What did we, you know, we know from the acharyas, from those we trust. It all boils down really to our accepting a bona fide spiritual master in the line. Now, how do we know what that is? Well, you know, there is a certain amount of circularity to it. We found out who is a bona fide acharya from the bona fide acharya, Srila Prabhupada. But he was basing it on Shastra. So it all comes down to that. It all comes down to having access to genuine Shastra, which we have to have faith in. Otherwise, we're adrift. We have no standing. So that appeal to authority, if someone says, "Oh, that doesn't make sense to me," you know, and we know that that's an accurate point of our philosophy. Well, in order to enter into this process, you have to begin with some faith, right? Adau Shraddha. Now that Shraddha, preliminary Shraddha, means some respect or interest that brings you into the association of devotees. But at a certain point, that faith has to be deepened to the point where you actually take up the process on the basis of your faith, and you accept a spiritual master who is embodiment of the Shastra, and he lives it, and what is it? Learn it, live it, give it. You know, that's the Acharya. And cast away our doubts. You know, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, slay these doubts of yours and rise up and fight. So doubts are things that have to be. We can't you know, just disregard them, but we shouldn't act on them. Having the faith that at a certain point by realization, by direct perception, all the doubts will be destroyed. Just like in the second chapter, first canto, we find there's a whole series of important verses beginning with what is real Dharma. Dharma is that which awakens your love for God, and it has to be unselfish. It has to be completely devoid of material desire and unbroken. You know, in other words, Bhagavatam says it wants to make you into a saint. It doesn't want to just say, oh yeah, once a week you come to church and you be religious. That doesn't make it, you know. So he says like that. And then at the end of the series of verses, there's 5 that are often quoted as an independent little lesson, beginning with hearing and chanting. Shrunvatam sukata Krishna punya shavana kirtana. By engaging in sincere hearing about Krishna from the proper source, in the proper attitude, Krishna within the heart, he cleanses away all the impurities. What does it say? Shrunvatam Krishna punya shavana kirtana means that just by hearing the pure vibrations about Krishna, such as the holy name, one acquires piety, just by hearing. And Krishna within the heart cleanses away the abhadras, the inauspicious things. Lust, anger, greed, all of our illusions, our doubts, all these things. And then when that process gets going, you come to the point of nishta, firm faith. Now this is the one I chant in the morning before Kled, nashta prayasha badreshu. By regular attendance and classes on Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all the inauspicious things in the heart are destroyed almost to nil, not completely. There's some left, but it's almost to nil. And one comes and one gets to the stage of irrevocable devotional service, meaning that you're well on your way. You know. And Lord Chaitanya defined this state, and he calls it a faith. Shraddha Shabde. You know this one, Ramapani? Shraddha Shabde, Vishwas Kohe, Sudidhanishtoy, Krishna Bhakti Korli Sarva Karma Katahoy. That real Shraddha, and this is what he's talking on the Nishta platform, means very firm position. Vishwas Kohe means very strong confidence that just by doing the things in Krishna consciousness, all the processes that have been laid down for us, all my aspirations will be fulfilled. I don't have to do anything else. That's real firm faith. Now, to come to that point, really your doubts have to be practically nil. So that's also dealt with in these verses. And after the Nishta platform, he says, oh, then you're firmly fixed in goodness. You see? Tadaradastamo bhava kamalobhadayaschaye cheta erta anavram stitam sattve prasidati. Stitam sattve means fixed in goodness and become very joyful prasidati. And the lower modes don't bother you, and they're concomitants: lust, greed, anger. You're able to control those. Those aren't impinging on your consciousness. And then it goes on. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti yoga. By this bhagavat bhakti, one becomes naturally joyful. The natural bliss of the soul, which is already there, anandamaya vyasat, becomes evident in every moment of your life. Prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti bhagavat tattva vijnanam. You get direct realization. Prabhupada would say there's jnana and there's vijnana. Gyan means you read the Bhagavad Gita and you know what it says. Vigyan means you realize directly in your own life the truth of the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavat Tattva Vigyanam, you understand directly, scientifically, Prabhupada said, means by direct perception, the truth of everything having to do with Bhagavad Bhakti. Mukta Sangha Sajayati. And then you become liberated from all material attachments. And then comes the verse I've been shooting for, which is the last one in the series. Vidyate vidya-grantis chidyante sarva sanshaya. Chiyante chasikamani dushte vamanishti. So all the knots in the heart are severed. In other words, you have absolutely no desire to enjoy anything in this material world anymore. From Brahma's realm down to anything. It doesn't interest you, including liberation. So Vidya Granti is finished. All of your doubts are destroyed because you're seeing, you're directly experiencing the truth of all of these things that you've just heard about. And all your karma is eradicated. And you see the Lord in the heart, and you see yourself. Drishta evatmani shure. Prabhupada translated, one sees oneself and one's master. So you get a revelation of God in the heart. So, but notice that the doubts are all gone. How can there be any doubt when you're seeing God personally? The doubts are finished. So, those doubts are symptomatic of our conditioning in the modes of nature. And here, this Daksha has gotten himself in a position of being immersed in an ocean of doubt about Lord Shiva. He simply will not believe that he is auspicious, that despite his associates, despite his appearance, he's greater than any jiva. Now, Prabhupada talks about several things here. Sati, first of all, on one level, she's defending her husband, but it's deeper than that. Shiva is not an ordinary living being. He's Vishnu in contact with the material energy, and therefore he's his own tattva, Shiva tattva. Prabhupada cites the famous verse. One of these days we're going to have like a seminar on learning the Brahma Samhita. I even at one time printed it out, and I have notebooks we can all share, and you can use it. So if you go and you study those Govinda prayers, you come across one about Lord Shiva. Chiram yata dadibikadi vishesha yogat sanjayate nahi patagastite heto yaksham, what is it? Shaksham utama vitata samapaiti karyad govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, says Lord Brahma, and then just as chira, milk, can be transformed into yogurt by the addition of the yogurt culture thing, and every cook knows that. Similarly, for a certain purpose, namely the creation, Vishnu, in touch with matter, transforms into Shiva. For a certain purpose. I worship Govinda, who's the origin of Shiva. So that's just what Shiva is. If you notice, Mahavishnu, he just glances at the material energy. He doesn't really touch, right? That glance injects all the living entities. But it's Shiva who actually consorts with Durga, and all the living entities start coming out in their different bodies. So that's why he's a different tattva. He's not on the same level as Vishnu, but he's certainly not on the same level of ordinary living entities either. Very auspicious. That's his name. Very name means auspicious. Shiva. Then Prabhupada talks about demigods can be elevated almost to the level of Vishnu, but that's rare. Brahma is almost always a very pious living entity, but sometimes Krishna, there's nobody adequate, so he takes the role. Vishnu steps in. Prabhupada dealt with that. And then this verse that Prabhupada quote all the time, Yanti Deva Vrita Devan, is that you go where you worship, where you place your attention and your hopes and your aspirations and your mind. That's going to inform your destination. So if you want to go back to God, you have to worship Vishnu. Otherwise, you can worship the Devas, or you can worship the Bhutas and the Pretas, or you can worship material energy. And just all determine where you go. So then Prabhupada, he summarized the argument at the beginning of the third paragraph of the purport. The position of Lord Shiva is accepted by Lord Brahma, so Daksha, Sati's father, should also recognize him. And this is also how we should accept those things which are difficult to believe or understand. Well, Prabhupada's giving it, he accepted it, so did Bhaktisiddhanta and Madhvacharya, and all the way back to Krishna. So we should suspend our disbelief and act as we'll one day understand it, and it'll be revealed to us. And that's one of the lessons from this very rich pastime, is that you want to know what to respect and what to revere in this world, find the most respectable and revered persons, and follow their lead. And that's what we do. Hare Krishna. So it's 8:32. Any questions or comments? Uh-oh. Are there any questions or comments? If there are, we have to have the mic. All right, but where's the mic? I'm going to get severely chastised. Hold, put it on pause. We have... Hare Krishna, sorry. I'm putting this on pause too. And one other point I just make really quickly is that Sati is now speaking on this absolute platform. She's not revering her husband, or, I mean her father, you know. She's just telling it like it is. Because she's willing to accept the consequence of it. He's not going to turn, then the logical thing for her to do now is to sever her tie with her father, which means self-immolation. So that's why she can speak so strongly. Go ahead.
There's certain things that we're kind of, I guess you could say, born with, you know, like in the material body. You know, like in the Bhagavad Gita it says that, right, you become addicted to a particular scent.
Yes,
how is it?
yes,
you get a certain tongue, and you get a certain senses, right? So, you know, people like me or many other people, you know, they grow up in a particular way.
Yeah.
And they're trained in a particular way, educated, trained, and so, you know, it seems that a lot of people, they have a hard time like casting off that, you know, that conditioning. So, whatever that may be, you know, like, you know, men are supposed to be actually trained in you know, like in the Gurukul and self-control and tolerance and, you know, for example, seeing women as mothers and so many other things, right?
Right.
But men nowadays, it's the exact opposite, you know, like in practically every aspect of how they're supposed to be trained, they're being trained otherwise. Of course, you know, I come from a bit of a religious background, and, you know, they try to instill some, you know, some good morale.
Yes.
But because of, you know, the lack of, you know, real religious experience, most men nowadays growing up, they can't, you know. So maybe you could just comment on the idea of being able, you know, what is how to get free from that conditioning, you know.
The situation now is an utter disaster in that regard. You have, you know, just on the, I mean, just to go back to when I grew up, you know. I mean, I grew up, I was a normal kid, you know, and I turned 13, you know, and then, you know, we'd come like sneak a Playboy magazine, you know, or something, and, you know, some stuff like that. But it was relatively, you know, it was very infrequent and wasn't a big part of my environment, you know what I mean? It was something that you explore, you know, like that. Which is bad enough, because I wasn't getting Gurukul training, obviously. But nowadays, it's like everywhere. It's in the ether. It's in the Wi-Fi, you know. A kid has to have his phone, and as soon as he gets his phone at age 8, or whatever it is, he can be exposed to the whole world of these things. And because of the central, you know, there's no government. You know, there are vestiges of the government trying to do something, but it's less and less each year, because capitalism really is a certain philosophy of life, and its philosophy of government and society. And it means that the market is everything, which really means money is everything, profit is everything. And so these absolute demons, you know, they may not have the fangs and all of the powers that we read about, you know, but they have the same qualities as Krishna described in the 16th chapter. So much wealth do I have today, so much will I get tomorrow, I'm the controller, the enjoyer, you know. But I have to look like I'm pious, you know, hypocrisy, damba. The word damba is used more than any other word to describe this thing. So what I'm getting at is that if just things go on the way they are, then capital accumulates within the guys who are the most nefarious and ruthless and so forth. And they control the education system, the media, and everything. And human beings are seen as consumers, you know. And to a more and more degree, it's just like, well, whatever we can sell them. I don't care if the kid is 8 years old. If he wants to buy pornography, we'll sell it to him. And that's what goes on. It's an absolute disaster. It's just 180 degrees opposite to what you described in the brahmacharya ashram or the gurukul, which is meant to be self-control. That means, you know, that what you see and hear and taste and smell is proscribed, and you're being trained according to Shastra by, you know, a sincere person who has your best interest at heart and knows how to do it. So here we are, having grown up in this society, and to whatever to a degree of what being contaminated and conditioned by it. So what do we do now? Well, that's exactly the reason why Lord Chaitanya started the Sankirtan movement. The central process, and we should never forget it, is this congregational chanting of the holy name. If we revere that, we understand it. We should hear about the glories of the holy name and glorify the holy name and the chanting of it. Not just take it for granted that I chant my rounds, you know, which is better than nothing, but it's risky. And that a big kirtan, you know, just visualize. I know this temple used to have, you know, when I came here, the temple was full practically, and even I came, it wasn't actually full; it had been really full. And to have a Mangalartik with 100 devotees in it, you know, or a Guru Puja with 100 devotees. And the kirtan going full on, and then later on in the day you all go out, or a good portion goes out, and you have an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of Harinam Kirtan. That's where the purification comes from whatever platform you're at. Jagai Madai would be the example. It can purify, but you have to really dedicate yourself to it, and go through that period when it's a struggle to follow and, you know, and everything, but with the association. The thing is that the process is especially geared toward the Kali Yuga. But we have our conditioning, and it's true, and unless we sustain that, that's why you know, we're doing our Upadeshamrita classes. We're soon going to come to the what are the 6 things that are destructive, and practically you'll find that if you're having trouble, it's one or more of these things. Atyahara priyasascha prajalpo niyamagraha. Niyamagraha means slackening off on your sadhana, or going through the motions without any emotion, without any concentration. Both are destructive, you know. Janasanga. Janasanga comes right through that phone. You can have as much Janasanga as you want. In my day, there was no, you know, we called our mother once a week. It's all, you know, I mean, and that was, it was much more of a closed system, which is good. And but then you have to have enthusiasm. You're not enthusiastic, try to be enthusiastic. You know, fake it till you make it, that whole thing. You know. Krishna sees you're trying to be enthusiastic, he'll give you enthusiasm from within. You know. Utsaha nishtayat dharyat, determination and patience. Without those 3 go together. You have to be enthusiastic, and determined means that when you don't want to be enthusiastic, you want to give it up, you're determined to stick it out, and being patient with your impurities, and you know that it'll work. And tat karma vivardhana, and following all the rules and regulations. So the process works when we take it as it is. And no matter how deep, now there are some people who have damaged, their brain is damaged, too much drugs and sex, and it's beyond the pale. We remember when we used to have so many bhaktas come, you know, and some of them just couldn't do it. They're too crazy, you know, and that happens too. But generally speaking, if you've got your faculties about you and you're not really super damaged, if you can apply yourself, the process will take place, and you'll be able to control, you know, your conditioning, the things, and eventually it becomes weaker and weaker. It's a struggle, you know. It's a joyful struggle, but it's still a struggle. But the best thing to do is more kirtan and more reading, because you strengthen your intelligence, you get the will to control the lower self and guide it. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.